Right. So my name is Vicki Nelson, and I'm the executive director of Lumsden Beach Camp. Lumsden Beach Camp is a United Church camp just north of Regina, Saskatchewan. So it's located in a valley in the Coppell Valley, kind of near the town of Regina Beach. And so Lumsden Beach Camp is actually Western Canada's oldest summer camp. So our story is long. But I'm just going to tell a little tiny bite-sized piece of the story today. I think maybe starting in 2014. So at that point, I was actually a board member for the camp, and we had like camp was going fine during the summer, but it was like so many United Church camps, kind of completely run by volunteers. Yeah, everything from hiring staff to dealing with insurance, it was just a group of like really, really hardworking, dedicated volunteers. And that summer, I honestly can't think of anything particularly explosive that happened, but there was just a lot of burnout. And so I was working in a different job and was ready for a change. And I sort of just threw it out. I'm like, what if we did a test? And we hired me for a few months to just try to like ease some of the pressure on these volunteers. And so that's how slowly it became a sort of general manager position, and then it became an executive director position. And that's how Lumsden Beach Camp moved from having sort of just summer seasonal staff to having a year-round position. And I think for small camps or organizations, I think sometimes having some staff momentum can be really transformative. So that's why I share that piece. And then between 2014 and 2016, we tried all sorts of interesting things. So we had some more experienced staff come on in the summer and serve as our directors, which was cool and exciting. And we started writing grants for the first time, or writing larger grants. We'd always kind of accessed sort of smaller pools of funding for camper sponsorship, but we started writing larger grants to different institutions, and things were kind of humming along. It was really great. And then in 2015, we started planning. We knew we needed to renovate our bathrooms, which if you are involved with the summer camp, you know that there are about 1 million buildings that just kind of, there's always one that is in desperate need of repair. And at that point, it was our bathrooms. They were old and they really needed some help. And so we had a working group, and we were looking at building a new structure, and then that seemed too expensive. And then we were looking at renovating, and that seemed doable. And then actually in my personal life, I went on maternity leave. Sometimes you can't time those things great. And then when I came back, the bathroom project was like well underway. They had decided to renovate, but the sort of price tag was a bit bigger than I think people had initially thought. And so the board and that committee sort of were under some strain to financially pay for it. The camp did have some reserve funds, but this project was looking to completely exhaust those funds. And like many summer camps, we were running sort of a small deficit every year and relied on having that background. And so when I came back from mat leave that winter, we took some advice. We enlisted the help of a woman named Tracy, who was a LBC alumni, and also I think had worked with EDGEy a bit, and was just like a skilled facilitator. And she met with a large group of stakeholders, everything from like cottage owners that live near, like have own property near the camp, to alumni, to parents, to campers themselves. And we had a visioning day. And there was so many big ideas and so much energy of like partnering with a school board and, running a year-round facility. And sort of really recent to that meeting, the Calling Lake Center, which was a United Church meeting and conference center, had recently closed. And so there's this idea like, LBC could become this new thing. And so that was great. It was like a beautiful day it was cold and sunny. It was February. I remember it. Lakeview United Church, it was kind of a very good day. And then we went away from that, and Tracy went away, and her and I met a few times and talked about like what was actually in the bank account. And she sort of said, she came back to the board being like, so to me it seems like there's 3 options. One option is to like take some of those really amazing ideas and like dig deep, become a 4-season facility, which at the time we were not. Like start seeing if there's a market for a conference center near Regina, like, do some major capital investments to become something slightly different. The second option was to try to make some tweaks because our income and our expenses as we were running as a summer camp, that's what we did. We weren't a conference facility. That just wasn't working. That wasn't lining up. So try to figure out some tweaks to make that work. Or the third option was plan now to be closed in 3 years. So close with grace. Make some like intentional decisions on how you want to, wind down this community. And so we had a really intense and difficult a couple board meetings, discussing those three possibilities. We, did pros and cons, so many flip charts, ran numbers, and we decided that we weren't ready to dig in and become a conference facility, and we weren't ready to close. We felt like we hadn't tried enough things yet. So we went to that middle path where we decided to do some tweaks. And so now that's my setup. Now I'm going to share with you some of the things we tried and where it's left us. So the first thing we did, or not the, actually, I don't remember the order, it's not important, but some of the things we did were we restructured how we charge camper fees. So we had seen that our camper numbers were actually growing, but we kept offering some discounts and stuff. Like if you register early, get a discount. And that, I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's a few $1,000s every year. So we got rid of those. And we changed sort of how we do volunteer discounts and all that stuff. We also restructured how we pay our summer staff, linked it more to what camper fees, so that our summer staff would increase as our income increases instead of just being kind of arbitrary. We also we started building partnerships, which this had begun before sort of this crisis moment, but we really dug into those partnerships a bit more. So we worked closely with Sask Outdoors, which is like an outdoor education organization, having them run canoe certifications and wilderness first aid on our site, and us accessing granting funding that they made available. We have built a partnership and strengthened a partnership with Scott Collegiate, which is a inner city school in Regina, to make sure that their students have access to the outdoors, and also that their construction students could, fix some things around our site. So these reciprocal relationships kept building. We also did some programming changes where we started a camp, which was actually came from a partnership with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Program. So we ran a camp so that people could access their Duke of Ed criteria by doing these wilderness adventures. Sorry, I have some notes I'm looking down. Oh yeah, we started renting our facility to 4-H, which is an organization in Saskatchewan that used to have their own camp facilities, but doesn't anymore. And so they started running a camp in southern Saskatchewan through us. We started having artists in residence live on site, and so through funding from the Sask Arts Organization, or Sask Arts Board, we had over a few years had several different artists, everything from musicians to installation artists to storytellers, come and live and join our community on site, which was really, really cool. We also started through funding from Embracing the Spirit. So we got funding from Embracing the Spirit. Students from Scott Collegiate's construction program built us these tiered garden boxes. And then we also worked with the Regina Bee Club and purchased some bees and supers and all the equipment to beekeep. So now we have gardens, which mostly feed deer because they're really hard to keep the wildlife out of, but that's great. And then we also have bees that we've had now for 3 summers. And this past year, for example, I think we got 270 pounds of honey, which we then package and sell to supporters of camp or to camper families. So that already, I mean, we got that through a grant, but it's already paid for itself and is now an income generative activity. Another thing that we did a couple years ago is we looked at where our expenses are, like any crisis moment, you look how can we earn more money, how can we save money? And one area is that we spend a lot of money on electricity, and so working with Faithful Footprints, we were able to access some funding through them, but also just some really good advice. So we switched out all of our camper cabin lighting to LED from some pretty old fluorescent situations. We also got rid of some of our oldest freezers and refrigeration in our kitchen, and then purchased one Energy Star appliance to replace a few, because we just had to make some tweaks in ordering and how we store food, so we weren't having to run as many appliances. And then on top of that, we also got two solar arrays on two of our buildings that now produce, or should produce, about 106% of our energy needs. And so I'm actually in the process of going through all that data, because it's been now sort of like a full year with the solar system to see what we're producing. And then I had a pal who works in solar energy look at it, and he said we've saved about $3,700 in the last like 15 months. So again, just like little changes, but those $3,500 here, 3,000 in fee reductions here, accessing a few grants here and there, selling honey, the tide started changing for us. And then the second last thing I'll mention is we start in early 2017, when we were at that critical moment, we went to our community and said, we really need people to donate. If you love this place, if you value United Church Camping, please consider becoming a monthly donor. And so through the PAR program, we set up this, what we call a community of sustainers. And so these are people who donate to the camp monthly. And that number, those people, the actual names, some of them have changed, throughout the years. As that happens, people join and people leave. But now it's like, something like 20, through the program, it's been $20,000 to $25,000 a year we receive through monthly gifts. Many sort of small to large monthly gifts, which has been honestly the lifeblood. And I'll talk about COVID and camping in a minute, but I think having those people contribute monthly has really meant that we've been able to pivot, and it's a big reason why Lumsden Beach Camp is still here. And then finally, I'll just say that I was on the board before I worked for the camp forever, or not forever, I was on for many years. And my understanding always was that campers pay a fee, but actually they cost us money. So the story we told ourselves was that, we run camp because that's the mission, but it doesn't actually make business sense. Where we're able to make up some of that funding is through like renting to other groups, through donations. Prior to the restructure in 2019, Lumsden Beach Camp was supported quite well through our presbytery. So those were the things that kind of kept camp going. Campers were just like the reason, they weren't paying for it. But we actually have some pretty smart people on our board now, and that really looked at it and was like, well, how can we shift that? And so without increasing camper fees per se, but instead we've looked at shifting our ratios and looking at the age of campers that are the camp ages that are most popular, and increasing those weeks. We've been able to increase our camper numbers, and then our minds were blown because our deficit disappeared. So through all these small changes, we were able to increase income, decrease expenses, but then also just by having more campers on site for more days, like looking at the summer just differently than we did. It's just like a tiny shift. We realized that there's actually like a magic number of campers that we're not there yet. We don't have the facilities yet, but just like a few more campers every week means that we go from losing money to actually making money and actually investing in sort of capital improvements. And I think, I don't know, but I think a lot of camps are like us, where we make the summer work, operationally, we pull it together, but then we kind of neglect a lot of our capital. And so buildings are old, water systems constantly leaking, etc. We're trying to get to the place where we look at, having money every year to be able to do those improvements so that we're not constantly, in deficit in our actual infrastructure. So yeah, that mental shift about, like, we always wanted more campers, don't get me wrong, but that mental shift of being like, oh, campers don't cost us. Campers actually can pay for themselves if we structure ourselves and make space for the right number of campers throughout the summer. So where that's left us is that for the last, few years, we've moved away from having a deficit. We haven't had a deficit in the last 3 years, I guess, 2 years. And now we've actually had some large surpluses, which is amazing. And so we're looking at now improving our, like, those capital deficits I spoke about. So looking at improving our dining hall and our kitchen facilities, which are in dire need. And also just being a bit more strategic about how we plan our summers. And so because it's a weird year, it's 2021. Last summer or last spring, I guess, was really scary when the whole world was shutting down, and we had to make the decision whether to run camp or not. And so we decided, our board, after many Zoom meetings in the spring, we decided in May that we would not be running overnight camp. And we already had lost all our rental income. We were going to have to reimburse tons of campers. It was dark, and I think lots of camps that I spoke with across this country, things felt pretty dark. And I feel really grateful for, like, folks who stepped up and made donations. Lots and lots of, we had more new donor donations, like so many people had never given to camp step up and give $20 or like donate their entire camper fee for, $400, which really helped us kind of like settle the boat when things were really unknown. And then government program, the government wage subsidy made a big difference for us, as well as many United Church organizations. And then finally, sort of 11th hour, our province decided to allow day camps. And so we quickly kind of pulled together our amazing young staff team, and they worked together to make 8 weeks of summer happen in 2020, day camps. So we bussed kids from Regina out to the camp for the day and then back home. And it was different. I mean, there was bleach sanitizing spray kits everywhere, and there was hand washing in between every activity and stuff. And there was masks on buses and less singing and mask singing when it did happen. But it was still like pretty magic, especially after the previous 4 months of not being able to gather. And so I think going forward to 2021, it kind of feels even more unknown, because we're hoping we can at least run day camps. Maybe overnight camps will be available, but because of our sustainers, because of the donations that people gave us, it's less of a I don't know, I feel a little less panicked this year about whether we can make, whether we'll be here at the end. I think we will. And I think that's, mostly due to just like an enormous and amazing community of people who love this place. And then also just about it's about the leadership, both the like young staff leadership who are just like smart and driven and deeply caring for kids and also for the place, and then also our board leadership who is trying to be very smart and very strategic to try to navigate the most difficult time that our generation has ever seen. So yeah, I think things look bright, and I hope maybe I'll be back here in 5 years and be telling you about all the other exciting things that Lumsden Beach Camp has been doing in Saskatchewan between now and then. Thanks.
Thank you. That was great.